Hello, friends of Tennessee Libraries. I'm Sam Wolfe, Director of Operations for the Dollywood Foundation. I want to welcome you to Dolly's hometown of Sevier County, Tennessee, and thank you. Thank you for what you do in your communities all across the state. Um, I truly believe that we are friends, and we appreciate the support for the Imagination Library and also appreciate what you do in your communities with libraries. Uh, it's more important now than ever. So thank you. I wanted to take a few moments to get you up to speed on the Imagination Library and our footprint. We've had a lot of growth over the last few years, especially, and you may not be aware of some of these interesting facts. So, as you probably know, Dolly started this program right here in her hometown, and it was a way to honor her father and have him involved. He couldn't read and write, and you'll hear her talk about that in a few moments. But in the beginning, there was no plan to expand the Imagination Library outside of Sevier County. And it was such a success that other communities started hearing about it and wanted it to expand into their towns. And around the year 2000, the foundation opened up the program for replication, meaning that the foundation would oversee all of the logistics, working with the publisher, negotiating pricing, processing the books, selecting the books, so that local communities can sign on to do the Imagination Library and only cover the cost of the books and the mailing. So at scale, we could keep all the pricing low, oversee the overhead that Dolly takes care of, and communities could receive books for their children. That was a huge success, and we've grown from Sevier County out to a few other counties across the U.S. Eventually, the state of Tennessee came on board, and we had a statewide program in Tennessee. That statewide program is still going today, and now we have 22 other statewide programs that are growing across the U.S. Some of those states have full coverage. Every child can enroll. And in other states, of the 22, we're currently growing our footprint on the ground. One of the largest new additions for states was California. They came on in 2023, and we're significantly growing our footprint in California. With about 2.4 million children under the age of 5, we have a lot of room to grow there. And so the Imagination Library has just expanded phenomenally. And not only are we across the U.S. and have all those statewide programs, we do have a presence in every state. We have a presence in every province in Canada. We also have programs in the United Kingdom, the Republic of Ireland, and Australia. And so when you combine all of the registrations across all of our countries, we, as of October 2025, we mail right at 3.4 million books per month, every single month. And that's just incredible to think about how we've grown from such a small program with heart to this massive international program that's making a difference in children and families' lives all around the world. And all of that success is because of partners like you in cheerleaders promoting the importance of books in the home and reading. And so you should be congratulated as part of this journey. Later this year, we will mail our 300 millionth book, which is just a phenomenal milestone to make. It took us 23 years. We started in 95. It took us 23 years to mail 100 million books, which we accomplished in 2018 when Dolly went to the Library of Congress and celebrated with Dr. Carla Hayden at the time. And in 5 years, we mailed our second 100 millionth book. And we're on track to do another 100 million in 3 years. And so we keep growing so fast that the years are just shrinking by. And so thank you for your support across Tennessee, and I'm sure everywhere you travel, you are the biggest cheerleader for the Imagination Library. So thank you. So that's a long way of explaining where we're at right now. But I thought it may be a good time to let you hear from Dolly and on why she created the Imagination Library. And so I'll let her take it from here.
Well, hi, everybody. This is Dolly. Now, before he passed away, my daddy told me the Imagination Library was probably the most important thing that I had ever done. That's saying a lot. And I can't tell you how much that means to me because I created the Imagination Library as a tribute to my daddy. Now, he was one of the wisest men I've ever known, but I knew in my heart this inability to read probably kept him from seeing all his dreams come true. So inspiring kids to love to read became my passion and my mission, because if you can read, you can teach yourself anything. In the beginning, my hope was just simply to inspire the children in my home county, but here we are today, an international program that gives a book each month to millions of children. Of course, I haven't done this alone. The real heroes of our story are the thousands of local partners and organizations who have embraced my dream and made it their own. They raise millions of dollars each year and wake up every day with a passion to make sure the children in their communities have every opportunity to succeed. It's been quite a journey, but we still have so much more left to do. And I would love for your community to join our family. Imagine a world where every child, regardless of their background, was surrounded with books, stories, and a love for reading. The first step is always the hardest, but you never really know unless you try.
Thanks, Dolly. It's always good to hear from her in her own words on why she wanted to start this amazing program. I want to shift gears a little bit to mention a couple more items. One of the big enhancements to the Imagination Library in the last 5 years has been the addition of a fully bilingual English-Spanish version of the program. What that means is that now in our 22 statewide programs, you can choose which book language you want to receive the Imagination Library books in. You can receive the traditional English version of the book, or you can choose to receive a fully bilingual English-Spanish version. That's from start to finish, all the way through up until graduation at age 5. This was a massive undertaking because we had to work with our publisher to do custom translations. Sometimes that required the illustrations in the book to be changed if the words were displayed as artwork. And there weren't enough books available in the catalog to have a full collection of books and have the changes that we have every year when new selections are made. So we're very proud of that addition. It is available in Tennessee, and so any family who would like to receive books in English and Spanish can choose to do so at the time of new enrollments, or they can switch over now and receive them the next month in the fully bilingual version. So that's an exciting enhancement that I would like to share with all of you. Additionally, while it's not new, I wanted to emphasize that the Dolly Parton license plate in Tennessee, I'm hopeful that most of you have these on your vehicles already. And I wanted to just emphasize the point that the money raised from those license plates, all the proceeds that come back to us as a 501c3 who sponsored it, we give that money right back to the counties in Tennessee where the plate was purchased. So families in Sevier County, if they go sign up for the specialty plate, that money goes right back to the Sevier County program. And that is the case with all counties across Tennessee. We do that on a quarterly basis. And so please encourage everyone to sign up for those license plates. It does help your local communities where you live. And I wanted to conclude today with some information about research. We all know about the feel-good pieces of the Imagination Library, the heart stories that we hear every day about how excited kids are to receive those books, but they really are making an impact. And we partnered a few years ago with United Way Australia, who is our partner who operates the Imagination Library down there. And over the last few years, we've undertaken a research project working closely with them. Dr. Claire Galea, who you'll hear from in a moment, used this as her PhD project. And I just wanted to show you the impacts of the program and how it's helping with emerging literacy skills, how it's truly having an impact on the love of reading and bringing families together. And so I'll let her talk through the research project with you. And then I wanted to just thank you. Thank you for having us and expressing interest in learning more about the Imagination Library. And if you have any questions at all, please reach out to me at the information at the end of this video. Thank you.
This idea came pre-COVID, where United Way Australia and myself approached Dollywood and said, this is what we are doing in Tamworth. We'd love to take this worldwide. And thank you to Dollywood for sharing my big dream, because then we got the survey from Tamworth, and after a lot of technological work, and the IT team amazing over there in the States, we were able to take this across to the USA, Australia, Canada, Ireland, and the UK. Next slide, please. So as Dolly would say, dream more, we did. We got these surveys and we invited all caregivers from around the world where the Imagination Library program is offered, from October 10, 2022 to April 24, 2023. Wow, that's over 2 years ago. That's a long time ago. And we invited those caregivers to participate in this research. And it was a survey which we built on Alchema. Took around 5 to 7 minutes, depending on the options and answers that you gave. But it was, for me, as the statistician, I received completely de-identified data from the Dollywood Foundation. Now, I can tell you now, after 30 years of being a statistician, I've never seen a data set like this. I've never got the opportunity to stand behind a data set so big. This is unprecedented. We now have the largest data set in the world on shared book reading, and we've had so many universities, organizations approach us about this incredible work. I'm so excited to share with you what we've done and the results. Next slide, please. So we based our research on the logic model, and we looked at our 3 key areas. So the first area was the home literacy environment, and I know you're all familiar with this logic model, which is great. Then we looked at reading attitudes and interactions, and finally the emerging literacy skills. So this was the way we broke up our research into 3 key areas. Next slide, please. And this is the response rate that we got from our surveys. We wanted 25%, and if we have a look at our baseline response rate, we got 26%. Fantastic. We got an incredible 86,206 baseline surveys. So those surveys went out before anybody got books. So this is looking at what are people doing before they receive any Imagination Library, and that's across all countries. We then surveyed caregivers approximately 6 months later from when they completed their baseline, and we got an amazing 34,435. And then approximately 12 months after baseline, where we got an incredible 18,000 surveys back. That is the largest data set. Now you can see the response rate across the different countries. If anybody's here from Canada, congratulations, Canada. You had the highest response rate at baseline. And you can see that the response rate by survey 3 was around 20% across all countries, which was fantastic. Next slide, please. And now comes to the fun bit for me of these parts of this presentation. So because of the incredible large size of this data set, we were able to do something really cool. One of the main criticisms in research in shared book reading, not just in Imagination Library research, in shared book reading research, is the lack of a comparison group or control group in my statistical background. Withholding those books is not what we're going to do. So how do we compare our data if we follow groups over time to people that don't get the books? So what we did, and I'll take you through this, is we looked at those 18,072 who got the books over 12 months. So for this research, they had to get a minimum of 10 books. And then we compared data from the children who at the end of those 12 months were aged 12 to 60 months. And we compared their data to people that entered the program at 12 to 60 months. That gave us a sample size of 18,000 versus 38,000. That's an incredible sample size. And we thought, well, we can go better. We then broke it up into age groups. So you'll see down the bottom on that table, we then compared the data for children that finished at 12 to 23 months to those that entered at 12 to 23 months. And again, we looked at data for 12 to 35 months, and we compared those data to those who entered the program. So these people had all had 12 months of the book, and we compared them to those that entered the program. So that gave us an imagination library group versus a comparison group. And just to give you an idea of the size of the data we're talking, our smallest group in those age groups was an incredible 10,000. So the results that I'm about to show you are statistically robust. When do we ever get sample sizes up in the 10,000s? Now, again, because of our data set being incredibly large, we were able to do some analyses. What we wanted to do, and like I said back at the beginning, this PhD was an industry partnership. It was led by United Way. And that meant everything we did had to be interpreted for industry so that people like yourselves can use the research that we've done. So although we've done some incredible level of statistical analyses, we had to do it in a way that could be reported for philanthropic donations, governments, launch events, which I had the opportunity to go to one last night, so that this research could be used in the real world. As I've presented findings from our work, the questions always come to us, well, yes, but does this work in the areas of high socioeconomic deprivation? What we wanted to do was take into consideration in everything we did factors that might have influenced the reading of the caregivers. So their socioeconomic status, where they live, their postcode, does that influence their reading? So what we did for all 86,206, and this was heaps of fun, we coded and matched every single completed survey to a deprivation index. In America, we use the area deprivation index. In Canada, we use the CMID for those that are here. In Australia, we applied the IRSID or the CIFA. For Ireland, we applied the Trinity National Deprivation Index, and in the UK, we used the index of multiple deprivation. So we used these deprivation indexes and mapped it to every single person so that everyone had a scale from 1 to 10 of socioeconomic deprivation, with 10 being the highest. We then wanted to report the findings by each country, and we did have to merge the UK and Ireland for sample size. We also took into account the caregiver's education. So we wanted to see if the caregiver had school education through to postgraduate university. Did that impact their reading? We took into account the age the child was enrolled in the program. We looked at whether or not caregivers found reading important. Did they think reading to a child was important? And whether or not the caregiver themselves was read to as a child. And like I said, the results that I'm about to show you, I've had the opportunity to present at the World Literacy Summit at Oxford University. Universities across Australia, around the world, are interested in this. I was on national radio this week. This is incredible. I'm so excited. Please go to the next slide, Sam. So part 1, our home literacy environment. This is section 1 of what we've got. Let's have a look at our first round of results. So next slide, Sam. So I'm going to take you through this graph, explain how we got this graph and these results, and then a little bit more about how we had the data. In Australia just now, only last year, a study has been released by the government, Department of Education, that has shown the most important variable, the most significant predictor of whether or not a child is ready to start school in Australia is if they're read to at home. Shared book reading. How vital is that study? The most important thing is if we get those caregivers reading to the children. We were able to show in this study, and you can see the findings there for USA, Australia, Canada, and the UK plus Ireland. We wanted to look at the odds or the chance of a caregiver or child demonstrating an outcome from those that received the books compared to those that didn't receive the books. We showed that children in the Imagination Library were more likely to be read to 4 or more days a week compared to those not in the program. We chose 4 or more days a week because the US Department of Education has shown that that high frequency of reading, 4 or more days a week, is associated with children demonstrating those emerging literacy skills, which are key to go on to be successful readers. The regular arrival of the books, the tip sheets, coming every month. We had caregivers report back to us that I'd stick the tip sheet on the fridge and it would remind me, have I read to Harriet today? That constant reminder of the reading, and we can see the results here. But let's have a look at this graph, because I'm hoping that you guys around the world will be able to use this research. This graph looks at the chance of this outcome being demonstrated. The horizontal line across the bottom shows no impact to the program. As the columns rise, the higher those columns rise above that horizontal, shows the impact of the Imagination Library participation in the program. And then we have the vertical black lines. They're what the industry called capital I's. If those black lines, those black vertical lines, don't cross the horizontal line, then it's statistically significant. So you can see across here that all results that across the world, caregivers were more likely to read 4 or more days a week to their children than those not on the program. How do we interpret the numbers? So the odds ratios on the left. Let's have a look at Australia, the USA first of all, sorry. So that's around 30%. 32%. So caregivers on the program had a 32% high chance of reading 4 or more days a week. It's around 30% in Australia. But if we have a look at Canada, that's almost up at 2. So we'd say that they were nearly twice as likely to read 4 or more days a week compared to those not in the program. So we're looking at the higher chance or more likely of people demonstrating that outcome. Can we go to the next slide, Sam? Now, please bear with me with the maths with this slide. I promise the only maths we're doing is multiplication. What we set out to do, and these results that I just showed you, are what we're calling worst case scenario. What do I mean by that worst case scenario? What we wanted to look at was, what is the impact of the program if the child's postcode was in the worst situation? What if they lived in the most deprived area? If the caregiver they had only had school education? If the caregiver was not read to regularly as a child and didn't think reading was important? And you'll have a look at that number at the top of 1.322. Now, those categories that I've just mentioned are highlighted in bold. Now, I've picked the USA. Please, I'm not saying the USA is worse. When we have a variable that doesn't have a rank, we take the category to start with as the one that provides the most data. So obviously, we got most of our data from America. So that 1.32, we interpret anything above 1 is rising above that horizontal line of a 32% high chance. But what if you're from Canada? If you have a look over on the left of the screen, if we wanted to find out what the effect was in Canada, we would get that 1.32 and multiply it by the value, if you come across, to the 1.469 of Canada. So there's our 1.94, where it's nearly twice as likely. But what about another example if we wanted to look at a value for the UK and Ireland and a bachelor's education? So what we have there, we would get the 1.322, our base value, multiply it by the value of 1.215 for the UK plus Ireland, and then multiply it by the value of a bachelor's degree of 1.575. We can see that if a caregiver in the UK and Ireland had a bachelor's degree but still lived in the most socioeconomically deprived area, they would be 4 times more likely to read to their child 4 or more days a week. That is an incredible result after only receiving the program for a year. In Australia, got to do an example for Australia. What about Australia with least deprivation? So in the areas of most affluence, they themselves would be 5 times more likely to read to the child if they were also read to as a child themselves. So these results are going to be published. We are weeks away from having this, and we have 34 outcomes. Obviously, I don't have the time today to go through with you all 34 outcomes, but just letting you know, these tables, those odds ratios on the right, we will be able to provide them all to you for all 34. So you can go away to your particular area, your country, and you can determine those values for each of your countries. Next slide, please, Lam. My words are getting mixed up. Our final, the last area that we want to look at for the home literacy environment today is the number of books in the home. We wanted to look to see if children in the Imagination Library were more likely to have 25 more books in the home. Now, we know research has shown us that the number of books in the home is directly associated with academic success. The more children's books in the home, the more likely the children are to go on and complete years at school. Our research showed here that nearly families in the Imagination Library were nearly 4 times more likely across all countries. Now remember, worst case scenario, to have 25 or more books in the home. But what was also interesting, we found in this research, that across all countries, the average number of books went up by 30. Now they only received a minimum of 10 books. So it suggests that this program's prompting caregivers to also access, borrow, or buy, get more books into the home. It's promoting that book culture, which is what we want to see. We had a caregiver write to us and say that given these books are right for my child's age, it helps me know what type of other books to get for her. So these are quotes we've got coming back from caregivers showing how the programs encourage them. Well, if this is kind of what my child should be reading now, or I should be reading, I know what to get. So we can see that the average number of books going up across the world. Next slide, please. So that's part one, our home literacy environment. Then we also wanted to look at part two, which is our reading attitudes and interactions in those short-term goals of the Imagination Library Logic model. And let's go to the next slide, please. Where did we start? Now, I can't go through all 34 outcomes, but first of all, I'm going to start with the caregiver reading attitudes and interactions. Let's have a look at just a few of those. So we know that sustained engagement, that engagement in literacy activities in the home, helps reduce those developmental vulnerabilities that children have going to school. So getting them ready to school, we know for engaging in those activities, that really helps. We wanted to find out if caregivers around the world were finding reading more enjoyable. And what we found across all countries, only just statistically significant in Canada, but proud to fly the flag for Australia, they're twice as likely to find reading more enjoyable after being on the program for only 12 months. But just to give you an example of what we mean by this, we had a family on the program who provided feedback. The child was around 6 to 8 months old. They'd been on the program since birth, book at birth model, and the mother was really struggling to bond with her child. It was a really tough time for her. And the books were arriving, and the dad would read the books every month. He said he felt more confident to read to the child as the books came along, and he was feeling that he could do this. And a book arrived one month that the mother of the child remembered her mother reading to her. She heard a partner reading this book to their child, and she came in and asked if she could read the book. That was the first time she'd done that, engaged with her child. That book gave her that bond. It opened up that door for her. She now is an absolute avid, passionate reader. She's a promoter of shared book reading. They've gone on to have another child, and reading is everything to them. It is the most enjoyable activity for them to do. And so, although I'm presenting data to you there, I've also got incredible stories that I'm looking forward to sharing with you. But what about spending quality time together as a family? So we wanted to see, after receiving the Imagination Library books, if these caregivers were more likely to spend that quality time together. We heard caregivers say that the postman or person would bring the book, deliver the book, but they wouldn't open it until the oldest child got home from school. And then they'd all open it together and they'd all read it. It was this whole book culture of, well, we all get together, we all read books. And that was consistent across all countries in the worst case for us. So that was wonderful to see as well. The caregivers are enjoying reading and they're spending more quality time together. And next slide, please, Sam. Now, here's some American results specifically, and obviously the rest of the results for the rest of the world will be published soon. So we wanted to look at the importance of the interaction. So caregivers' interaction during the reading with their child, engaging during that reading. And these are vital. We know research has shown us that these interactions are vital for helping children develop those emerging literacy skills. We can see there that in the States, caregivers were more likely to rhyming words, teach rhyming words, letter sounds, letter names. But I can't not focus on that middle line, well, almost middle. Look at the count images and objects. Now, being a statistician, caregivers in America were nearly twice as likely to count the images and objects. That suggests to us that the Imagination Library is introducing caregivers to numbers and numeracy and counting within those books, not just literacy, but it's introducing that aspect as well. That's a study we've got on going on in the world. We're looking at all the books that the children in Tamworth received, and we're looking at the maths and numeracy. I'm really excited for that project. Also, describe images and objects. So, as I said earlier in the presentation, Shared book reading introduces people to new words and phrases and sentence story structure sequences that are different. They're more complex than in everyday life. Like the word platypus. I'm not sure if all of you know a platypus. It's an Australian animal. It's unique. But in one of our books, we have a section on a platypus, and we got feedback from caregivers. They enjoyed describing this unique animal. So seeing these results come across the board in America is fantastic. And remember the sample size. We're talking 18,000 versus 38,000, incredible statistically robust data. And the final one there is letting the child hold the book. That's an important development for a child as they come across to the concepts of reading and the orientation of print, because if they're holding the book, it helps them see that those black squiggly lines on the book are actually the words. They're what the caregiver is reading out. So we can see that caregivers in America are more likely to let the child hold the book. Moving on, please, Sam. What about the children? And this is exciting. I love this slide. This is the gold. We know the mission of the Imagination Library is to encourage children to have a love of books and reading. So if we have a look at the first graph, we can see across all countries that children on the Imagination Library were more likely to be interested in books. And that is just fantastic to see that after only 12 months. Imagine after 60 months. Look at the graph on the other side. This is age just for the children 12 to 35 months. Now, we saw the biggest effect in our research in these age groups. If they're getting the books at birth, it appears that the biggest impact is coming around 12 to 23, 35 months. This graph here is showing you if the child themselves initiate book reading. So back in our sample study, we found that 75% of children were asking to be read to daily. And that was great, but our sample size was 89. Now we have a sample size of 18,000. We can see that children on the Imagination Library are twice as likely to initiate reading. So they're coming up to the caregiver with their book, or saying book, or going to where they'd normally read and sitting with that book. They themselves are prompting the reading. So not only are the caregivers regularly reading, the children themselves are, this is what we do. We read books, let's read a book. So we're promoting that initiation of shared book reading through participation in the program. Next slide, please, Sam. But what about the older children? So we looked at the younger children just then, and now the older children. Around the world, our research showed that children aged 48 to 60 months, it's not very old, but they're still old in our study, were 2.3 times more likely to be interested in reading. That's incredible. That's around the world in our worst case scenario. So these are children in the areas of most socioeconomic deprivation. Just imagine the impact after 60 books, if they're twice as likely to be interested in reading. And further on from that, Sam, next slide, reading alone. So children are going and picking up the books. They're flicking through the books themselves. They're pretending to read. They're engaging with these books like it's just every day. This is what we do. They're not on their screens. They're looking at these books and undertaking this reading alone. And then that's what we looked, plus another 10 to 15 outcomes on reading attitudes and interactions. And then next slide, Sam, our final area was looking at the emerging literacy skills, part 3. And this took a lot of work. This was fascinating to put together. And because I have the time today, next slide, please, Sam, I can actually give you the questions of what we used. So we worked heavily with the Macquarie University Centre for Reading. And a big shout out to Macquarie University, because they did give us ethics to undertake this worldwide research, which was nearly 300 to 400 hours of work to get that through. So Macquarie University have been great. And what we worked with this section here, we adapted questions, just slightly the wording, from the Baylor Emerging Literacy Screener and the Early Language Scale. So these questions are just slightly worded to be used online from standardized assessments that were standardized in America. And we looked at the 6 key areas, of the emerging literacy skills from the logic model. Our concepts about print, the first section we wanted to know was if the children were holding the book the right way and pretending to read by pointing left to right. Their alphabet knowledge, whether or not they could name letters that the caregiver pointed to or make the sounds of the letters. Receptive vocabulary, wanted to know if the children could answer questions like who, what, where, who brought the picnic in that big brown bear book, and could they follow directions that included 2 or more steps? Could they retell the sequence of events for expressive vocabulary? And we know they're doing that because they're reciting the Big Brown Bear book as they come through. And can they connect two sentences using the word and? We also looked at phonological awareness if they were rhyming. So if the caregiver says, okay, we've got the word bed, can you say another word that rhymes with bed? Or name words beginning with a certain sound. So b, what's another word that begins with b, bat or ball? And then our final one was whether or not they could repeat new words. Next slide, please, Sam. So in general, what we found across the world was that children, after receiving 10 books, were more likely to demonstrate all 6 of those key emerging literacy skills. Now, just to give you an example, what I talked about earlier in Tamworth with the children coming, all playing the Big Brown Bear in the first week of preschool, what the early educators found in preschool was that these children were coming ready at the age of 3 in week 1. They're holding the book up the right way. They're retelling their sequence. They're connecting their sentences already. So much so that the early educators in Tamworth have had to adapt their curriculums because these children in this cohort were so far ahead of previous cohorts. They were so ready to learn to read and develop these skills that Tamworth's seeing this whole shift now. And these children are just entering kindergarten this year, or have entered kindergarten, and we'll be following those children right through. But let's break these amazing results down. Let's have a look. Next slide, please, Sam, for the emerging literacy skills in the US. Now, remember, these models will come out to other countries. We can use just multiplication and we can work out the results for those, but we will be publishing every country. Let's have a look at these results working left to right for concepts about print, and we can see that across all of the 6 key areas, children in the US were more likely to demonstrate these key emerging literacy skills. And please keep in mind, these are worst case scenario, and we have this incredible sample size, unprecedented data. This is amazing what we can show you on this slide today. The main ones we're looking in this 3 to 5 area is the expressive and receptive vocabulary. And we can see that children were nearly twice as likely to demonstrate these skills after only 10 books. Imagine 60 books. But have a look at that phonological awareness. That is incredible, that they're over 3 times more likely to demonstrate phonological awareness at this age. It's just setting those children up so well for a great start to learning to be successful readers. I'm interested in the phonological memory, whether repeating new words. So that's obviously an area that we're going to look into. But congratulations, what amazing results to see that, these children are 2.5 times more likely to be familiar with the alphabet sounds and the names at this age of 36 to 60 months. Next slide, please, Sam. So in conclusion, summarizing up what we found, next slide, please, is that, I guess the word's there on the slide, but from me coming to all of you everywhere around the world, in conclusion, what have I learned after 1,036 days on this PhD? Only do a PhD if you love it. That would be step 1. But conclusion, believe in the program. Believe in what you're doing, because this is the most statistically robust analysis with the largest data set in the world. These results are solid. There's 3 statisticians on this work. One of them is a professor at Macquarie University. We pushed him beyond any stats he'd ever done. You can stand by these results. What we were able to show is that children who participate in the Imagination Library were more likely to be interested in books, initiate the shared book reading, and demonstrate emerging literacy skills compared to children who did not receive books. And that stands no matter the child's postcode, no matter their socioeconomic deprivation status. It doesn't matter what country they came from or the caregiver's education. This program works. Next slide, please. And so in conclusion, just to finish up, thank you to Macquarie University, who had supported us throughout this research, to United Way Australia, Dolly Parton's Imagination Library, and to the team in Australia, the Imagination Library team in Australia. Also a big shout out to everyone who's here for promoting the program and getting the books out there, because without you, none of this would have been possible.